Thank you so much for joining in. We'll wait for a couple of minutes to start. Till we begin, why don't those of you who have joined us, please let us know where you're joining us from. So I am in Delhi. Gauri, where are you currently?
I'm in Mumbai.
Oh, that's great. Would love to hear from all our attendees where they are joining from. In the chat box, you can mention where you're coming from, joining us from in the chat box. Oh, wow. Bihar, if I'm not wrong, is joining us from Doha. That's amazing. I was not expecting the first response to be out of India. I would love to hear from more of you where you're joining from in the chat box. Till we wait for a few minutes. Great. So, hi everyone. My name is Ulka. I'm a program manager at Harappa School of Leadership. And today we are here for the webinar from liberal arts to product management with Gauri Bansal. We have Gauri here who obviously made her pivot from liberal arts to product management. She's an alum of Young India Fellowship and also currently working as a product strategy manager at Spotify. Now, before I give away too much of her part of the presentation, we're going to follow a format where she has something prepared for us for 10 to 15 minutes. In the meanwhile, you can put your questions in the Q&A box. It helps us monitor the questions better. If you could put them in the Q&A rather than the chat. And yeah, we'd love to keep this interactive. So Gauri, let's begin.
Thank you, Ulka, and thank you to your team for having me here. It's a real privilege, and I was really looking forward to this session. Yeah, I won't waste everyone's time. I'll just quickly get into it. I'll share a little bit about my journey and hopefully share some insights, some frameworks that have sort of helped me make this pivot into product management. Yeah, let's begin. So hi everyone, thank you for joining. My name is Gauri Bansal. I am a product operator. I've worked across a bunch of different things within product and tech companies. Shameless plug, this is my Twitter ID. So I post a lot about product related insights in case you'd like to check it out. I'd love to give you a sense of what my squiggly journeys look like. And I borrowed this from my mentor, Pramod Sinha, because he's always called some of us Ashoka grads very squiggly career entrepreneurs, where we've gone ahead and traversed a multidisciplinary kind of journey since college. So like Ulka mentioned, I joined Ashoka University to pursue an undergrad in liberal arts. I actually did the undergrad program, not the YAF, so got an additional time at Ashoka for 3 years, studied bunch of different subjects. In fact, fun fact, I changed my intended major about 3 or 4 times because I just didn't feel what I love to do. Fell in love ultimately with history and international relations after this class that I sat on 20th century wars. And I was a science student in school, so it was one of the most unexpected turns, but I didn't overthink that change after a point. Ended up taking history and IR, thinking I'll pursue a career in multilaterals and public policy. So once I decided that, I joined the India arm of the Albright Stonebridge Group. ASG, in case you're not familiar with it, was the company of the former US Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright. We worked for the South Asia practice, where I specifically looked at business advisory and consulting related problems, which could be market entry, market expansion, government advocacy, building regulatory frameworks for certain industries, for a bunch of different energy, tech, social impact clients. Did that for about 2 years and ultimately realized maybe consulting wasn't for me. And the main insight that I had there was like consulting requires a lot of like chasing someone else's goal. And I think what excited me more was building and creating something from scratch. With that, I had sort of the opportunity of a lifetime when I joined Twitter right when the pandemic hit, actually. So I joined Twitter virtually in 2020 to lead the managing director's office for India. This was an incredible opportunity for me, because what I ended up doing was I got a bird's eye view of how to build a global tech company locally. I worked with almost 16, 17 teams on various initiatives. So it spanned across revenue, consumer, policy, marketing, communications, partnerships, crisis management, because there was quite a bit of that, everything. And yeah, it's, if you're considering B school, and I'm guessing a lot of folks here are keen to understand more about accelerated management programs, a role like this is also a really interesting accelerated management program in and of itself. But I also yearn for a career path. Usually these chief of staff like roles don't have a career path of their own. While they're really good to have you gain some sector agnostic skills, after a point, it's important for a generalist in you to find a domain that you can really go deep into, which is when I sort of started to transition into product. And at that point, we were building an emerging markets team where we were bringing for the first time a team to build products out of India, a full stack team, which means we had product engineering, data, design, research, everyone sitting out of here to build products for the world. And that was a great opportunity for me to transition into product. Where I worked on their emerging markets group team. And when, the Musk acquisition happened, I moved to the global notifications team, both giving me a really incisive view of how to manage products at that scale. And more recently, because I craved a new challenge and circumstances were such that I wanted to move to another consumer company where I'm able to sort of do the same work but be met with a few different challenges. So that's when I ended up joining Spotify, which is where I work today. And I work on product strategy and localization for India, which is I lead all of product strategy, road mapping, development across verticals for Spotify for India, which is across ads, music, podcasts. So that's been a pretty squiggly career spanning policy, strategy, product. And, looking back, I can obviously tie this into a story, but trust me, when I was going through it, it didn't quite make sense for me. So yeah, I mean, here's a snippet of when I look back, what really worked me and enabled for this to happen. The number one thing was people taking a bet on me. And this is one of the most underrated things when we talk about you can't engineer your career over a point in time, and especially what it takes for you to open doors for other people. So I was grateful and privileged enough that there were people who I met along the way who were willing to take a bet on me and give me a chance. The second thing was, like I said, I've always been a confused generalist. So what worked in my favor was trying many, many things. For example, when I was at Twitter, I tried working with as many as like 12 teams on multiple different challenges to figure out what was for me, what energized me, what excited me. And largely most of them led to an elimination for what really didn't float my boat. The third thing, and this is something I highly recommend folks, especially early sector professionals, to look at, which is have a trusted group of advisors and mentors. And you don't have to have just one, you can have it for different parts of life. Fourth is building transferable skills. So, what consulting taught me was just how to communicate well, how to think critically, how to problem solve, very, very basic transferable skills that are important for any job that you end up taking. And also thinking long term. A lot of our career decisions today are trying to solve for the short term, here and now, what I want to do. But if you just try to zoom out a little bit and think about where is all of this headed and where do you want to be and what different paths can enable that long-term journey, you'll actually find giving yourself a lot more breathing space, patience, and a lot more diversity in terms of what you can try out. So why tech? And this may resonate with a couple of you because I'm assuming that folks who have joined here either are working in tech and want to move into product or have a particular interest in just understanding what this is about. So this is my version of why I decided to get into the tech part of things and why it still continues to work for me. Number one is the joy of building. If you resonate with if what energizes you is the satisfaction of watching something come to life, creating it from inception to end, iterating on it and seeing how people are responding to it, building delight and impact in everyone's lives, then I think being in tech, there's really no time like that. Second thing is critical thinking, and that's all day, every day, because tech is so new and it's all pervasive today. You will be challenged to think critically about almost everything that you can think through, especially when you're thinking about products. You need to take a 360-degree view, a very comprehensive understanding of a user's reality, a business's reality, the market's reality, and triangulate it, tie it all together. And that requires a great deal of like building your tech acumen, understanding how you can create enduring value for people, and regularly thinking about how do you drive needle moving outcomes for yourself, for your team, for your company, for the community, whatever your purpose may be. The third thing, which I'm guessing resonates with quite a few of you, is riding the wave. And this is what I strongly believe. If you want to build sustainable careers and not want to be replaced by AI, it's really important to think through where's the momentum of an industry headed and sort of ride the wave of that change. So tech right now may seem like it's sort of burst and it's on the scene and it's growing, but I trust me, we haven't even scratched the surface and there's so much. So working on areas and problems like what today a big part of like consumer tech is dealing with is only going to increase in both relevance and opportunities, and you're going to create a lot more equity and value for yourself as a professional. So it's important to ride that momentum today. And lastly, it's no 2 days in a job like this look the same. You know, you'll be doing new things, new products, new challenges every few days, months, years, and you kind of engineer your career into eliminating the risk of ever feeling bored. Because if you feel bored, you can always change jobs, industries, teams within the organization, and you'll be working on an entirely new problem, an entirely new skill set. Let's talk a little bit about like then timing. And this is, you know, I don't know if a lot of you are Shark Tank junkies, but it's all about why does doing something like this matter? So at the risk of making all of us sound like products of our own doing, timing is really important. And it's important because it helps you gain a significant amount of leg room to sort of grow very quickly into it. So tech, unlike what it was, say, 20 years ago in the Silicon Valley, is no longer a singular composite entity for, you know, Patagonia jacket wearing tech bros. Today, tech has grown significantly, whether it's in the types of companies that are sort of digital first, which can be across consumer, B2B, enterprise, infrastructure, or sectors within this. It can grow entirely based on what domain expertise or what purpose or what kind of impact you wish to drive. And also scale would define a lot of like your ownership, accountability, and how much you are able to sort of create an impact within a big organization, a slightly smaller organization, a mid-cap organization, etc. The other thing is that there's a lot of movement happening from other parts of an organization, which were traditionally business functions or business support or enablement functions like sales, marketing, communications, partnerships, into tech. So irrespective of your background, with the right sort of transition plan and transferable skills, there's a way to prepare a career for most tech tracks today. And lastly, why liberal arts sort of differentiates you amongst all these other pool of candidates is because diversity within tech is a real differentiator today. The kind of problems that tech is trying to solve is so diverse, and so the composition of the team that's trying to solve it needs to be equally diverse and comprehensive, so that we're able to not feel like we're creating vacuum products in a vacuum, or creating products that are obsolete very quickly. So representation and diversity of perspectives, opinions, and ideas have a great influence. I've seen it myself that what you bring to the table and how you're able to sort of spin a story around it really matters. And this is just an example to show that there is a lot of movement happening from these, what you see on the RHS, these two different buckets of business and support within core tech. And when we say core tech, these are your full stack functions like engineering, product design, data, research, curation in the case of some consumer content companies, strat and ops, and so much more. I wanted to give a sense, and I do a much larger workshop around this, but because we want to give a lot of more time for like questions towards the end, I'll give you a short snippet of a framework, a sample framework that you can think through if you're looking to pivot your career within tech or into tech from another industry. What are some of the cycles that you can go through, and sort of just a mental model for you to take back? So I've divided it into 4 sections. There's assess, prepare, break in, and grow. Grow, I'm not focusing so much on because that really means that you've entered the kind of role that you want and how do you sort of build your career from there. But let's talk about assess for a few seconds. Assess is all about understanding where you are in your journey and how and where do you want to go. And this is a very introspective exercise. You don't need too many resources or people around you. This is you sitting down with yourself and being super honest about a couple of things. So one, you want to have you want to do a visualization exercise for your career. And what that means is, what I ended up doing was build this career Venn diagram. A lot of people do different versions of it. There's also Ikigai and all these other frameworks that people choose to use. I did a very simple one, 3 different buckets. Jot down maybe 3 things about what you love to do and what you're good at. So for example, I can say I'm really good at problem solving, communications, and critical thinking. And what environments do you thrive in? So that's your second bucket. And I can say that I thrive in a very entrepreneurial environment. I like ownership, I like collaboration, and I like seeing things come to life very quickly. I don't want to wait and delay my impact. And lastly, what kind of problems excite and energize you? So here you're talking more specifically about domain. So that domain could be, I want to work in like women's financial freedom, or I want to work in fintech or education, and more. You can go as granular as you want, depending on the clarity that you have. Once you have these 3 buckets, try to see what story your subconscious almost trying to tell you. And more often than not, you'll be able to map it out. For example, if I say that I'm good at all these 3 things, based on my conversations, which may come in the prepare stage, I can probably figure out that I could be great at like a strategy role. I could be great at a product related role, or even a business development related role. And based on what environments I thrive in, I can choose what scale of a company I want. So if I want something really entrepreneurial, I may want to go to a startup. And I want high ownership, I want quick impact. Maybe a startup's a better way for me to do it than a big tech company. And in terms of what kind of problems excite me, if I choose education, then I have a very clear story. I want an edtech startup that enables me a role in these 3 buckets. And so it becomes really easy for you to sort of go deep and learn about what are these different opportunities that are available in all these 3 buckets for yourself. And it helps you have a very clear idea to decide how you want to approach things. Because I hear a lot from people that, their challenge at the outset is that they're not able to see where do they start. And I think you should start with yourself more than, looking outside and what everyone's doing. Just figure out what you're truly good at and what floats your boat, and sort of take it from there. The second stage is preparation, which is start identifying the teams, the companies, and build a stakeholder map for yourself. If you're moving internally, start identifying champions within your company. This could be your manager, this could be your peer, this could be a colleague in another team that you wish to join, and start sort of building relationships with them. And building relationships here means be as non-transactional as possible to just learn about what are their opportunities, what are the challenges, what are they working on, what is something that is exciting them, is that something that excites you as well. Bring insights and ideas to them that you feel like maybe of value. So you start sort of creating this signal demonstration mechanism where you not only show your interest, but also start influencing decision making and expertise in a very easy sort of hands-off way, but start sort of seeding those relationships. Once you have more idea about what they're doing, and you sort of have those conversations, learn about what it takes to get and grow in a career, in a role like that, you start to think through, okay, these are the skills that I currently have. This is the skills that needed. And here's where the gap is. So the gap can be, say, I don't have the quantitative skills required to get into PMing. And then you build sort of that plan to start filling that gap. And once you do that, you'll naturally see that based on what you found out in your assess stage and your preparation stage, you'll already have a story about you coming together. So for example, I was a history generalist, right? What do I have to offer in a product ecosystem? But I took that interim role for strategy where I tried many different things. And one of the things I tried was create a new product. And what I ended up doing at Twitter was create a new product around women's safety, like a proactive safety solution, which takes down harm and abuse against women. It was something I was passionate about, something that pushed me into a critical tech space. And that is how a story sort of came together, that I like this, I tried this, these are my learnings and results, and this is probably why I can thrive in a career like this. If you're able to demonstrate signals, no one can sort of question why your background, like they may not even bring up your background beyond a point, because they'll be so focused on conversations around what you have to offer in that moment. And lastly, it's breaking in. So it's very similar to what I was just getting to, but seed your growth with the team. Start showing them signals that you get it. Understand what they are looking for. Is there a role availability even? Don't sort of badger them in case there is no role. It often works against you. Start upskilling yourself based on the skill gap that you identified, and start upselling the value that you can create and bring to the team, because more often than not, there's still too few of liberal arts graduates or even folks from like non-tech backgrounds. So you will always be an asset in a team like that. Yeah. And lastly, I'm going to leave a few ideas on how you specifically can think about breaking into PM if you haven't done product in the past. So there are three major routes. The first is an APM, which is an associate PM rotation or internship programs. These are only recommended for early stage professionals if you have 1 or 2 years of career experience, or you are, say, an MBA. Post MBA roles do really well in it. But the sad part is very few companies in India today at least do APM programs. They're pretty big outside of India. Route 2 is lateral movements, which is suitable for like early and mid-career professionals, which is largely what I spoke about right now. And Route 3 is MBA or relevant postgrad, again suited for early to mid. And MBA is a great way for you to sort of start thinking through and building a product mindset, no matter where you come from, because MBA or management programs in general tend to be a really good leveler for you, a skill leveler, a sector leveler, and you can sort of start afresh from there. Your role in any case as a PM will comprise of three main components. There's going to be tech, which is what is the product and what powers the technology or the infrastructure that powers a product. For example, if you take the case of a Facebook, the underlying mechanism is a really strong machine learning algorithm that sort of personalize, even for Spotify, right? It's a strong machine learning algorithm which personalizes the content that you continue to see. So you really want to be very, very familiar with what is the tech, what's the infrastructure. And trust me, it's way more complicated than just saying it like this. Second is business, which is where and how is this tech situated, in what industry, what's the market looking like, what's the market growth, how's the business doing, what is its main revenue generation channels. And the third and most important for a PM is the user. Who is it for? Who's consuming? Why are they likely to buy my product or use my product? Why will they buy my competitor's product? What is their spending power? What is their user behavior like? What is the microeconomic situation of the country? All of these things. What are the behavioral aspects that guide my different user segments? Building that user empathy is the most important thing that you're going to do. So if you have a non-tech background, I would say a decent place to start is be excellent at one of these three. Either be a great tech guy or girl, or a great business professional, or a person who really gets users. And last thing is PMs and PM managers always look for certain signals. And I think I can cover it in Q&As in case you're curious about like what these signals are. But signals are essentially just indicators that you have what it takes to be a great PM. So identify what those are for the teams that you wish to work with, because like no size fits all, and start to sort of build skills there so that you're able to demonstrate it. So to just close in, some key learnings along the way, right? Like you your success rate is equal to the volume of opportunities you create, and especially too from product management, the number of things that you do, the luckier you'll get. So try to do many things. Not everything is going to land, but you have to keep hitting at the goal. Once you've identified from that assess and prepare what your goal is, keep hitting at it, pivot, slide, take feedback from people on what's working in your story and your resume, what's not, and hit again. Let your motivation and skills influence your career and not vice versa. Don't work backwards from wanting the best career and wanting to be a PM in a hotshot company and then seeing, oh, what skills I need. Think very critically about what skills do you have and then what kind of a PM or what kind of a tech operator you can be. It may just be that you're a great communicator, but you don't like the tech aspect of it. So maybe a product marketing manager is a better role for you. And all of this will become clearer when you talk to more people. Build a lot of non-transactional relationships along the way. It's the strongest currency. Like I mentioned, a big part of my career progression has been people who took a bet on me, and people are only willing to take punts on you when they have seen you grow and they've seen you sort of demonstrate the kind of skills that you do. And it may not pay off immediately, but it'll keep paying off in your life with these relationships. Articulate and own your very unique narrative. Trust me, as a liberal arts grad in tech, you will be one of a kind. So you need to own and articulate a very, very strong story for yourself. Focus on building those transferable sector agnostic skills. And I keep repeating this, but essentially all I'm talking about is critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, and user empathy, lots more stuff like that. And the only way to sort of stay relevant is to constantly upskill. Even when you get in and break through the PM role, you'll realize that that's when the actual work starts, because it's not a very easy discipline to be in. It's not a very easy discipline to sort of consistently grow in. You can only grow as much as value you're able to create. So constantly try to sort of stay ahead of the curve. Yeah, that's me. So thank you. This was a very short version of something that we do over sort of 1.5 hours, but hope you found this useful. And I'm happy to take questions. Maybe first Ulka and I can have a conversation, and then I'd love to talk to you guys.
Thank you so much for that, Gauri. I think you covered so many aspects that I have so many questions right now to ask, but there are multiple questions coming in the Q&A, and I also have a few questions. So why don't we start taking one by one, both areas. So I think first I would like to jump on to one of the questions that we have in the Q&A, which says, I would like to hear your thoughts about future of PM, because PM don't code, don't design, don't create, don't market, and don't do sales. So how do you see the future of product manager when they don't have any of the solid tech skills at all? And I think a question, an additional question to that from my end would be, having come from a liberal arts background, you jumped into a very tech-based product management role. So what are some disadvantages that you faced, and how did you overcome those? So I think I feel both of those questions go hand in hand. So I would love for you to answer that.
Sure. On the first one, it's a very interesting analogy, right? Like I often think it's analogous to a film director. Like a film director is never holding the camera, is never designing the costumes, is never sort of thinking through what the landscape is, not writing the dialogue, not writing the story, but he or she is the person who's making it happen. And I'll tell you what the difference is in what a PM essentially ends up doing in a tech company. PMs are responsible for defining the what and the why. And this is arguably one of the most foundational things that you need to get right. What is essentially what we need to be building, and why is the most critical question. Why are we doing it? Why this? Why today? Why now? Why against our competition? So you need to take into account a lot of market realities, what your business's North Star metric is, and what your product holds today. What is your value offering? So you are responsible for really defining that for your team, so that engineering can sort of do the how of it, and design can sort of design that experience and show what it looks like. So in that sense, the role of a PM is never going to be obsolete, because you're essentially trying to get at to a very, very foundational thing of a product building, which is thinking through very rigorously what needs to get built, and why are we doing this today? Because if you don't have really strong data, research, intuition guiding what the company needs to do, what's the strategy going to look like, then you're essentially just building things, right? Some may be a hit, some may be a miss, but that's not how comprehensively your products can grow and sort of reach users. Also, I think you started that question with what's essentially the biggest challenge for PMs today. I don't think the challenge is that PMs won't have enough to do. I think the challenge is that we're competing against AI, because a lot of, if you have looked at those chat GPT examples, AI has sort of mastered the craft of putting together a fantastic product proposal, which takes into account what's a compelling hypothesis, how do you write that hypothesis, what do you want to test, who your users are, how do you justify through market insights. And that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges that you want to think through as a new PM. How do you not get obsolete with the advent of AI? Because if that's all the value that you have offer, it's not going to work. I think the single biggest thing that we have as PMs, which is defensible against AI, is a skill called reasoning, which is the most exciting thing about PMing and is not very easily replicable. Reasoning means you're constantly going at the root of asking whys. And in a world that's becoming increasingly complex in terms of what the user demands, where the market's headed, our AI will only sort of follow from where our world's heading. And so it's really important for PMs to stay ahead of the curve and to be able to understand from multiple different perspectives. Again, a great skill that liberal arts graduates can bring to the table, which is multidisciplinary thinking. Think through the implications of every single thing. For example, when Twitter was born, say a couple of years ago, one of the strongest features that it incentivized was retweets. Only as sort of usage went by did we realize that retweets is actually a really powerful mechanism that can also be misused to spread fake news and misinformation and dogpiling against people. Having a very, very sharp product lens on it, you think of it from a 360-degree perspective, what's going to be the sociological, economic, psychological implication of a product like this, and that is reasoning and really going to the root of it. So that's, I would say, something that you can do to sort of stay ahead of the curve and make sure that you're constantly adding value to whatever team you're a part of. What challenges I faced as a non-tech PM, fluency with tech aspects and data was certainly one of them. Did not know enough about what a basic tech infrastructure looks like, what APIs do we use, what is an API, how is a machine learning algorithm sort of construed, what do candidate sources look like in machine learning algorithms. This is all something I'm still getting to learn. The second thing is dealing with data and engineering stakeholders. You need to be able to win trust of your engineering stakeholders first, your EMs, your tech leads, so that they know what you're talking about and they're able to sort of band with you. They're able to understand your vision because you're really laying out what the product vision looks like. And if you don't understand the tech properly, it's never going to work out. You're never going to be able to innovate and set up sort of nifty, strong experiments that reduce tech debt for companies. So that's really important. And how I ended up overcoming it was just learning and not being afraid to ask questions, finding champions who could sort of sit and teach me what working a dashboard looks like, how do you interpret data, what our infrastructure is about, having them really explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. And really, trust me, when they say it out loud, they'll also realize that it's way more complicated in their head as well. And so it becomes clearer for everyone in the room. So not being afraid to ask questions, breaking down, thinking through first principles, bringing everything to its critical parts and assessing it at one after another, rather than thinking tech as this complex entity. That's how sort of I went about it.
Thank you for that, Gauri. So we have a quick clarification, which is being asked on LinkedIn by Carl. You mentioned APM somewhere. Can you tell us the full form of that and what it means?
Yeah, it's Associate Product Manager, which is sort of the first level of product management. Why it's different is because only certain companies have it. Now, I think a few startups have also started having this kind of a role, but largely it was a case for big tech companies where this is a rotational program where first time grads or post MBA grads join a sort of a trainee program, and they're made to sort of work on products from different teams, and they can rotate and they get absorbed by one of the teams. So it's one of the ways where how people can get into product management with no prior product experience.
Right. So you mentioned in your previous response that having a multidisciplinary lens coming from a liberal arts background helped you a lot. Are there any other skills, anything that you learned, which helped you become a good product manager apart from having a multidisciplinary lens?
Yeah, I think I'll extend that question to not just liberal arts, but in general, what are some of the non-negotiables that help you get into product management? And you can actually be of any discipline and start demonstrating it. So like I'd mentioned, the first non-negotiable that you have is user empathy. You want to be able to demonstrate that you really understand the user segment, what they want, what they're about, what motivates them, what are the barriers to entry for them currently. If you're doing a paid product, for example, one of the main challenges that I have in my current role is how do we scale subscriptions, get more users to sort of think about buying premium, and if that's something that we care about, then it's really important for us to think through what gets users to convert and guides buying behavior. And all of this is you really put yourself in the user's shoe and think about, is this something that I'm willing to pay for? Because we're at the receiving end of so many of these today. So that's one. Second is product sense. Product sense is probably the most mature skill. It's really hard to build. Folks who spend 10 years, 15 years in product also are probably in the journey to getting to build a good product sense. But product sense is essentially you understand where user empathy meets a good product journey, which is how a product sort of plays out. For example, if you're defining a great onboarding flow and you want to minimize drop-off so that you get as many users to sort of onboard onto your product as much as possible, you really try to define a very creative, visualized, low friction journey for them to onboard. And you're able to marry that with very significant pulses of how of what gets users to sort of motivate and traverse that path. That's product sense, that you're able to marry these two very, very critically. Third is critical thinking, that you're really able to break down any problem in like its atomic parts and able to deal with it individually. Technical fluency is not mandatory. It really helps to have technical fluency. But this is something you can learn on the job. Other really important thing that I think I haven't mentioned yet is data-driven decision making. And data-driven decision making is just being able to ask the right questions of data. Let data guide you and tell you what users really care about. And here it's not just quantitative data, all kinds of data, qualitative market data, what you've been tracking as part of your product metrics. Try to let them tell you the whole picture, but often when it may not, also allow your gut and your intuition and your cultural understanding of the user sort of step in and say what needs to be done. So try to triangulate all these different data sources and come at it with a sharp, specific insight that you think that you really want to hypothesize and experiment with. Ruthless prioritization. You will be that person as a PM who will be prioritizing and sort of directing the team's focus on the biggest opportunity with the highest return. So try to show signal there. And communication. You're the glue that will often tie all of these different points. I don't like the term CEO of a product. I think it's very reductive, but you are essentially the anchor that's holding this entire process together. So I feel these are some non-negotiables. And if you are thinking of a career in product, these are some that I possess, some that I had to constantly demonstrate in my interviews. So try to use examples that show that you're a critical thinker, you're a data-driven decision maker, you're a good communicator, you can prioritize along really comprehensive lines and metrics, and that you possess great user empathy. There are some others which are great to have, which may not be very critical, but again, it really depends on the role that you're in. So try to show that you can manage and set expectations, manage stakeholders, can handle project management, etc.
Thank you, Gauri. So we have one question in the Q&A box by Tanisha, and she's doing her psychology from Ashoka and wanted to know how can her and others as university students build these signals that you mentioned in your last slide. That is important in every field. And I think not just university students, but maybe it could go beyond even, early or mid-career professionals. How could they build these signals?
So this is going to sound a little philosophical, but I would say that there is really no way, there's no one way that you can do it. Let's look at some of the signals that I mentioned, right? Product sense, user empathy, technical fluency, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and fluency with data. All of these are things that you build over a period of time in your career. If you're thinking of a career in product, I would say start with things that help you gain sector agnostic skills, which is how do you think and how do you write? And especially if you're someone at Ashoka, we had critical thinking seminars that helped us through that. So try to take courses which enable you to think very, very deeply about problems. Another area that sort of lends itself really well to getting into PM is consulting, because as a consultant, you're thinking through multiple different challenges from various perspectives. You're thinking through business, operational, strategic implications of things. So in your career, think through whatever your day-to-day job may be. What helps you build credible examples for one or more of these skills, and try to use them as demonstrable as much as possible. If you feel like today you want to move into PMing and you don't have sufficient insight or data that help demonstrate that you can be a great candidate, start crafting your career in a way where either within the company you're able to take projects which challenge you to say become better with data, which is, for example, something that I did when I was a consultant. So I wanted to sort of get onto a project where I'm able to do a little bit of financial planning and modeling for a company. Now that is very, very different from product analytics, but at least it shows that you have some familiarity and a knack for numbers. So you're able to make that case for yourself. So it really doesn't matter that you need to do like 10 different courses into PMing and all of that shebang. You just want to know there are 5 main skills. I at least want to build these 3 because I feel like I'd be a natural fit at them. And you can go ahead and do that through learning new courses. You can do that through current projects. You can do that through, asking your manager for more projects that sort of help you grow in that particular domain. That's again a really, I'm going off track here, but it's a really good insight for career growth is articulate what you want. Don't just have your manager tell you what you should be doing. Articulate to your manager what is it that you want to grow into and help them help you. So those are a couple of ways that you can start at least collecting those signals. And demonstrating signals is all about communication. So start articulating how you present yourself as a narrative, because often as a PM, you'll be building less, you'll be selling more. You'll constantly be selling your idea, you'll be selling stakeholders, selling people to prioritize your product on a roadmap versus someone else's. So you constantly want to sell and upsell and show value in what you're selling. So think of yourself as the product that you want to sell first. Create that story around yourself, who you are, what matters to you, why you'd be a great fit, and start sort of sharing that with people. See if it sticks. If it doesn't stick, ask for feedback, change your narrative, and go at it with that point of view.
I think this particular advice is so applicable for all other skills. I mean, demonstration of what you're doing and how you project it to others has become very important in any field.
Yeah.
Moving on to a question that has come on LinkedIn by Prasad. A quick question asking, on a scale of 1 to 10, how sound should a PM be technically?
So this is, the answer will really vary based on the kind of company that you're in. So if you're into a hardcore tech product, then high, because you want to be able to You can't build something that you don't get or don't understand. The second thing is, for example, it's a consumer company. So the second layer of it is, what kind of a PM are you? If you're a consumer PM, then you can do with something from a mid to high understanding. But if you're a platform PM, and platform PMs essentially work on like app performance and Android performance, things like that, like really the infrastructure and what something is built on, like the core machinery that something is built on, not the end user interface. In that case, again, really high. But in the case of sort of end user interfacing, you probably want to sort of amp up a little bit more of your business sense and your user sense. And the third thing is what stage of your career you're into. So if you're an early sort of early PM, 1 to 5 years of experience into PMing, you can sort of grow into it. You don't need to know everything from the outset. But if you want to grow as a manager and you want to start taking like strong decisions and prioritization exercises about where the company is headed, you want to take a more strategic approach to what kind of products you want to be building, how is it contributing to your entire sort of your Uber business goal, and you want to sort of constantly push the envelope of innovation. The more you grow in your career, the stronger you want to be at within in terms of your tech acumen. So I think it really, really depends. But if you don't have a tech background, I would say keep honing what you're good at, but something that it becomes indefensible in your case when you're vying for a very strong opportunity is to also show that not only you're great at these 5 things, but your foundations and your basics are really, really strong. And you can't sort of do without it, man. I mean, if you want to be into any kind of, say, consumer company or a SaaS company today, the core infrastructure is built on a very strong, complicated machine learning or artificial intelligence basis, or any kind, honestly, of one of the leading tech infrastructure makeups. So think about where you are in your career, what kind of role you're in within PMing, and what kind of industry you're in, and talk to more people there on how they ended up building it. And I think that's a really good way to grow into it.
Thank you for that, Gauri. I hope that helps, Prasad. Next question we have in the Q&A by Chandan. He has 2 questions actually, which I think are sort of interrelated. So he is Chandan says that I've mostly worked solo and have now built a product that has validation and traction. The product involves code, design, marketing, and is ready to scale. Can you give some guidance on how to go about making the first few hires for the team? And his second question also follows, which he asked much earlier. For any advisors for mentor, what should you prioritize? People who you believe in or people with skills?
Very interesting question. To the first one, to be honest, Chandan, I have never been a manager. I am an IC. So I really don't think that I'm the authority on advising you on how to hire well. I have been on certain interview panels, and what I can say is, if you are a seed or a pre-seed sort of an entrepreneur, if you've built the product, try to assume the role of a PM yourself, because no one will understand the product as well as you. If you want to start monetizing that product, or if you want to raise funds, try to think through skill sets that you don't currently have and are going to be complementary to the kind of growth that you want to see. So I really wouldn't go into specifics around what kind of roles you should hire for, but think about, since you've built it solo, what are your strengths within the whole full stack and business ecosystem, and probably make a list of what you currently don't possess and what's going to be critical for your next leg of growth. So I build a roadmap for yourself in terms of where you want to see this product grow to. If you want to be raising funds, that you ideally want someone who can help you build a strong, is really good at sort of business making plus communications, and can sort of help you craft a really good story around your product and get other people on board. If you want to start testing it out, you ideally would want someone who's great at marketing, so that you can get a few things and going and sort of test, like have an alpha test of your product and see where it's headed. So think about skills that are complementary to yours that you currently don't own, and try to hire, and be nifty about it. Don't get too many people to start working with you already. Start slow, start in a really nifty and frugal way, and see what's left, and try to upskill yourself on a few things as well. On mentors, now this is a really interesting question because a lot of people want great mentors, and I again sounds very cheesy, but really no answer. What really worked well for me is finding mentors and finding therapists follows the same pattern. You ideally want someone who you can jive really well with. I liked someone who didn't give me the answers, but who asked me the right questions. So in a lot of cases, some conversations that I had, I'll tell you, the people who I thought could be great mentors, but actually I didn't end up pursuing them as mentors, was people who had really strong opinions about careers or about opportunities, because then they're trying to really influence decision making for you and telling you what to do, and that sort of takes away the agency from you to craft your own story. And for me personally, that didn't work. If you feel like you operate well within a structure and you want someone to give you a structure, then maybe seek that kind of a mentor. But for me, for example, what worked really well was unknowingly the kind of people who ask the right questions and help me see multiple different perspectives, showed me sort of the pros and cons of each of them, worked really well. So that's one. And the second thing is, I like to have different mentors for different things. So I like to have my mentor for product, who is a product manager, who's a seasoned product manager, has built products, can understand it. Then I have someone else who I sort of go to for like larger career questions about purpose, about where it's all headed, about how I can think through, higher education and upskilling, like as a professional as a whole. And then there'll be mentors who sort of coach you on life, on things around how to be how to balance multiple different aspects of your life. So think about what a mentor can solve for you, because they won't be able to solve everything. And think about what kind of approach do you want. Do you want someone who's a sectoral expert who can get you very, very specific insights and opportunities to get into something? Or do you want someone who pushes you from the back, sort of assumes a role of more of a facilitator, helps you guide your thoughts, structure them well? Really depends on what you need, but be very, very specific on what you want out of a mentor.
Thank you for that, Gauri, and thank you, Chandan, for that very interesting question. The next question is coming from LinkedIn from Carl. As a PM, how do you ensure that the rest of the team don't drop the ball when it comes to a project? Are there any methods, tips that you can share?
It's a really, really good question. And one that as a PM, you will face many times, because this can happen for multiple different reasons, right? Like you may have a roadmap, you may have something that's really well thought out, you have gotten funding for it, you've had engineers commit to it or designers commit to a certain timeline, and it still falls through. And it can be organizational. For example, the company pivots its strategy and where it's headed, or you may have a really strong competitor offering and you have to pivot your plans very, very quickly. Or it may happen because the team is constrained on bandwidth and they just can't take it up. For example, this happened to me multiple times where we scoped out an experiment and we had 3 mapped for a particular quarter, and we realized experiment 1 wasn't scoped to its T, and the services that we wanted to deal with was so complicated that it took us an entire quarter to be able to finish it. And so we had to drop the other 2 experiments, which arguably could have been really important for others. What I think you can do to make it as defensible and as how do I put this? You want to essentially make sure that you're going after the best opportunities, because as a PM, what you have under your control is making sure that you're creating the highest value impact with in the fastest time possible, or in time possible that justifies the investment that your team and you're going to put into it. So the way to do that is be very, very clear of articulating your vision and how that vision sort of relates to your larger business goal. Second is create buy-in at the outset. Before your roadmap planning starts, create buy-in and do very, very rigorous risk scoping and dependency scoping, which is, if I want to try experiment X, does it have all these different teams that need to sort of participate into it? What are the different risks that I anticipate, internal or external? So be very, very thorough in your product process planning so that you're able to call out and sort of look around the corners so that there are no surprises when you actually do it. The third thing that you want to do is focus your team's priority on the most impactful thing, not just the thing that, like, don't try to go for quantity that you want to do many things, go after quality. If you're able to do that, in many cases, you would have directed the team's focus to what's necessary and what's essential to your team's growth, and chances of sort of you or the team dropping the ball on it are really low. But in case that ends up happening, you essentially want to have a pivot plan. So as a PM, you may realize that you'll be faced with a lot of challenges day to day. Some content isn't available, or a service has sort of gone rogue, or your API is broken mid-launch and things like that. You essentially want to be able to think through second case, third case, contingency plans for what happens if this doesn't happen, and help the team sort of pivot very quickly onto something else, or make sure you deprioritize, learn, have a good retro with the team on what worked, what did it work, communicate, and make sure everyone takes equal ownership, or whoever sort of is irresponsible takes ownership, and sort of move on from there.
Thank you for that question and answer, Gauri. So Hriday on LinkedIn is asking, what kind of upskilling has the highest impact for landing a PM role? UI UX research or project management / Scrum? Gauri, you went on mute.
Sorry, I think neither of those. I think to start with, and I sound like a broken record at this point, but I think you should be able to, those three buckets that I showed, tech, business, user, I think you should show really strong signal in at least one of them. If you're able to show in two, nothing like it. For example, if I'm able to show really strong business acumen, that I understand how to what my business strategy is, what my operations look like, how do I make it defensible against competition, I understand what where timing's headed, I'm able to make sort of a business case scenario for what growth's going to look like for this kind of a business, how can I scale it, what kind of business levers do I need, whether it's BD, partnerships, marketing, etc., to grow this business, etc. So you essentially want to be able to be strong in one of those. If you are thinking of tech as your strong suit, then think about whether you can be a really strong sort of design thinker. And PMs really tend to be great visual thinkers. So if you're able to demonstrate that, that is one aspect of it. If I take a sort of a derivative understanding, then a lot of PM interviews will focus on product strategy, technical rounds, and design rounds. So you ideally want to do at least, again, well in all of them, but really be strong in two of them. So try to think of those couple of things, but really there's no replacement for critical thinking skills, design skills, product sense, user empathy, communication. If you have this nailed down, I think technical aspects can circumvent themselves, or you can be really well prepared with your technical understanding of the product as well. But don't try to faff it up. If you don't know it, be very, very honest that this is not something that is a strong suit. For example, in my case, data wasn't a strong suit, but I told them that that's something that I flipped as a learning opportunity for myself in the interview, that I would love to learn as part of that team. Yeah.
Great. So I have a question, and there's I think following up my question, there's a question posted in the Q&A box. So Gauri, how does one go around building a network into product management? And in the Q&A, someone has asked that how does one identify these jobs? Are there any particular platforms where you can find product related roles being posted?
Yeah, so on networking, I feel there's, again, no formula, but I said, I think I mentioned in the presentation, start with industries where you can demonstrate a bit of user empathy, which is think of yourself as a user of a particular kind of product. It could be consumer, SaaS, in most cases it'll be consumer. So look at, what I did a cheat code. I used to go on all these VC websites like Lightspeed and Sequoia. I used to look at what are the different categories in which they're funding, which gives me a really strong understanding of, consumer internet as a category, fintech, health as a category. And when you start there, you're able to see, okay, what are the top 5 companies that are doing great stuff in fintech today in India, and I can filter it by geography. When I start to do that, I go very, very clinical with my LinkedIn search, like TMs in, I'm taking a random fintech company, Zerodha. I'll start to look at who's working in Zerodha. I'll start sort of cold DMing them, or I'll look at within my network who's someone who I know who could be connected to someone there. Start reaching out. At this point, also create that career when that I spoke about, what you're good at, what energizes you, what problems you want to solve. It helps you gain a lot more clarity around what kind of industries you'd be best suited for, what kind of roles and teams you'll be well suited for, because even within all these large companies, there are various different teams that are trying to solve multiple different problems. So all of this, once you start doing that derivative exercise, will become clearer. And then it's really about having as many conversations as you can. So the key to building a good network is be non-transactional. So try to learn from people. Don't ask them for a job. Honestly, everyone's really tired of like saying the same answer. They won't have a job, especially in the macroeconomic scenario that we're in. Jobs are really tough to find. In that case, maybe this is a good time for you to start focusing on sort of skilling and communication, so that you're able to build relationships. And every time you reach out to someone to learn something, they'd be more than happy to do that, to sort of share their insight and what sort of got them there. So try to have as many career conversations as possible. I can't emphasize the returns on this kind of time investment. You will gain so much insight and knowledge that you won't ever understand if you're doing passive searching on the internet. And again, like I said, it's a volume game. So you'll reach out to 100 people, maybe 20 respond and 10 actually end up talking to you, which is still more than zero. So do take that leap in having conversations with as many people as possible. I forgot, Ulka, what was your follow-up question?
The follow-up question is in the Q&A that how does one go about identifying TM related jobs, and is there any particular platform where one can search for it?
LinkedIn's great. Also, if once you have identified the kind of companies you want to work at, go to their website, go to their careers page. They'll all have it listed. The other cheat thing that I used to do is I used to go to VC companies' websites, like any Sequoia, Lightspeed, Bloom, Matrix, all the big ones. Try to look at their portfolio companies, look at the industries they're funding. A lot of these VC companies, because they also help at least early stage companies hire, like pre-seed, seed, series A companies hire. So they'll have job listings there as well, which is often a really strong indicator for you to filter out which are good companies for you to work at. So endless resources, but also once you start building sort of one-on-one relationships, especially within, if you want to laterally transfer within a company, start talking to the people and seeding the fact that if something opens up, they would want to reach out to you.
Great. So Gauri, I know we are at time, but if you are willing to stay back 5 more minutes, I think there are still questions coming in, and it would be great if you could answer them.
Sure.
Great. So since we're talking about networking and finding a job in TM, there's one specific question which says, I don't have tech skills, but have worked in edtech building curriculum and taking it to app. How do I find what product domain I will be strong in?
Interesting. I think besides domain, you should start a list down as part of this kind of a role. What are some basic skills that you learn? For example, if you've built curriculums, you probably are a great visual thinker, and you could also be really strong in consumer empathy, because you, as a curriculum builder, you always want to be thinking through from a student's perspective as well as a teacher's perspective, what is going to be helpful. Also, if you're designing experiences, experiential learning, etc., I would say visual design, communication, user empathy, really strong ones for you. So if education is something that you want to continue to be a part of, I would say look within product opportunities that help you be in consumer focused sort of product roles. If you want to pivot into something else, try to look at adjacencies as much as possible. Don't take too large a leap where it's really hard for you to justify what you're trying to get at. So look at aspects of this, like skill building, or to some degree, like financial teaching, etc., etc., etc. So some adjacencies within the kind of problems that different people are trying to solve for, to sort of map the domain in terms of what kind of product roles. If this is your first product role, be very agnostic, right? Take anything that comes your way, which you think could be a great learning opportunity for you. And once you start doing that, you may gain a lot more understanding about, in terms of technical understanding as well as mapping to your strengths, whether that's something that's sort of helping you grow into a particular field or not. So be as agnostic as possible. If you are a product man, if you're looking for a product management, over time you can sort of be a lot more specific in terms of, you want to be a design focused PM or a tech focused PM, business PM, and within platform, consumer, or revenue. All of those categories are sort of for later. Right now, take a general PM role.
Another question that's come in the Q&A, can a content writer shift into this vertical?
I think anyone can shift into this vertical. So anyone, if you put your, again, this is a corny bumper sticker, but you can do anything that you put your mind to. You just have to be willing to put in the hard work in upskilling and learning about what it takes for you to get there. So start owning your story on why, as a great content writer, you're a great communicator. Hence, you're able to understand and serve, deep underlying psychology of users. For example, if you're a content writer for a website, you ideally want to be thinking really, really strongly about like digital behaviors and psychology, and what's really going to get people's attention and get them to buy something. It's just a great product skill, right? We always want to be thinking about how do we sell to users. And so if you're able to flip that into the narrative that helps you showcase some one or more of these skills, go for it. So there's really, really no restriction.
Great. So I think we have probably one of our youngest attendees on LinkedIn, Pushkar, who's asking, I've just finished my 10th grade. So what I have to do after my 10th to be in product management?
Read. Study, please study whatever subject you want to study. I don't think you need to be thinking about how do you become a product manager at this point. Management is one of those skills that you can develop at any given point in time. It's really good that you have that direction at 10th grade. Honestly, I'm envious because I was a mess when I was in the 10th standard, but just read, learn about the world, do things that you're passionate about. Pick up in 11th and 12th standard, pick up whatever you're good at, whatever you love learning. It's not a very easy part of school, so make sure you're doing actually something that you love. And I would say the same thing about your undergrad. After a point, your degree is agnostic, but if you choose to do sciences, you'll naturally have a flair for it. If you don't choose to do sciences, you may have to do a little bit more effort into understanding how you can bridge that gap, of course. But if you're anyway interested in product management, I don't think that should be a problem. So on non-sciences, you can do an economics, English, political science, and then traverse your journey. Also, by the time you end up being a product manager, it would be like 6-7 years. Product management as a discipline would have changed a lot. So I wouldn't say that you should be thinking about use today's lens to think about future skills. What's always indispensable is how strong you are in your basic professional skills. So just focus on learning what you want, what you really wish to do right now.
I love the clarity though. I mean, if I had that much clarity, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So just 2 more questions we'll take and then we'll close the session. In the Q&A, someone has asked, people talk more about the product frameworks everywhere. Are these frameworks, do these frameworks really matter, and how this will be helping in building products? Are these frameworks really necessary for PMs?
What kind of frameworks? So frameworks that we use within PMing or to get into PMing?
I think probably you could start with answering getting into PMing and then follow up with.
Yeah, getting into PMing, those frameworks are suggestive. You don't have to use them as gospel truths. At the end of the day, you should adopt a methodology that comes naturally to you, that you can that is sort of tried and tested and proven to work for you. Go ahead and do that. These are supposed to be mental models to help structure, especially for folks who are not very sure, who can get overwhelmed with choices. Having a framework sort of gives a lot more definition to how you can approach a problem. If you're looking for something like that, then adopting a framework like this makes sense. If you're talking about frameworks that we use within PMing, they're just our arsenal. These are tools that we use. For example, a data scientist would use Tableau and all these different kind of dashboards. Similarly, prioritization frameworks or data or product assessment frameworks or user research frameworks. These are all frameworks that are tools for us to use to get to the most comprehensive answers. I don't think you can do without them. As a PM, you must really try to get to learn those frameworks as skills. And once you have, like 3 different ways of doing like product prioritization, you can choose which one you like to, you feel is best in that case of scenario and situation, and that works. So if you're a PM and you're thinking about those frameworks, they really matter, and I think you should invest some time thinking and learning those. But if you're talking about like how do you transition into careers, it's only for you to have some structure into the way that you're approaching these transitions.
So there's another question in the Q&A by Tangadurai Ishwaran. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. What should be a key takeaway message in your PM interview?
Again, I'm not sure if you're asking for a takeaway that you want to leave someone with, or you sort of want to take away with yourself. I think what you should try to take away from is the signals that you want to demonstrate. Also look for them in your employer. Is this, if you're talking to your hiring manager or folks, adjacent to or are going to influence your role in that company, try to understand from them what kind of culture is it. And that's the first when circle that I spoke about. What you're good at and what kind of environments that you thrive in. Is it a is it an entrepreneurial environment, high ownership, accountability? How do they like to communicate? What kind of culture do they have? What is their approach to product management? Some companies like to do really iterative experimentation. Some try to go with a big bang and launch once and see what happens. So try to gain signals that help you understand whether that's an environment that you can thrive in. Just if it's a big company, just because it's really large and it has all these different opportunities it has to offer you, doesn't mean that it'll always fit what you're looking for or what kind of a person you are. That should be the takeaway for you. If this is a place that can help you grow and unleash sort of your potential and grow and take the next step. Like if you want to get to a B school, does this give you sufficient meat to demonstrate and learn to get into B school? That's a regular example, but I hope that drives the point. And takeaway for you to leave someone, your interviewer with, I think we've gone over this a few times in this conversation. So try to leave them with an impression of a very strong story. Like the story that you start with should be the same story that reaches them, and their interpretation of the story should be the same. And just focus on helping them learn that you're someone who's hungry to learn, hungry to grow, can be a great collaborator, is very trainable, and it really excels at and has clarity about what they are good at and where they want to grow.
Thank you, Gauri. I think part of this question was also answered by Atul, who did a webinar with us on a similar topic. So maybe you could check that out and go into a detailed answer over there. I think, Gauri, one quick, in brief, if you could tell us, I know we've gone over time, but if you could quickly tell us about how you ended up at Spotify.
Very, very serendipitous, actually. I never intended to. In all candor, I was focused on pursuing something that wasn't a full-time job at all. I was looking to sort of take a break, study for a bit. It happened almost serendipitously, where I just came across the opportunity through a common sort of forum. I've always been a fan of Spotify. It's the app that I use to stream my music, stream my podcast. So I'd always wondered, and I'd heard a lot about their product culture, that the PMs there are truly one of the best cohorts. And once you're in PMing and within tech, you through the grapevine know what is a great product culture, what's a not so great product culture. So Spotify was always one of those skewing to the extreme great product culture. So I wanted to learn from there. And I found out who was hiring for the role, and I shot them a cold email with my resume and telling, and just a very short email saying what I've done at Twitter, why I think this opportunity is really interesting. And it had a lot of synergies because what I do today is also building Spotify for emerging markets, and very, very similar to what I'd done in the past. So I think there were a lot of synergies that I was able to communicate in my cold email that drew up that response. And yeah, I think I hit it off really well with the interviewer who's now my manager today, and took it from there.
Thank you so much. So cold emails do help. I think that's a note for all of us. And thank you, Gauri, for spending time with us and answering all of our questions and sharing your insights into how did you build your pivot plan. And I'm sure there are a lot of takeaways, especially for me as well, on how can anyone build their pivot plan. Thank you everyone for joining us. If you would like to know about the Accelerated Management Program, the Harappa School of Leadership, please do check out our website. You can also book a one-on-one call with one of our admissions counselor and have a conversation with them on how can Accelerated Management Program help you. Admissions for cohort 3 are open, so do check it out. Thank you so much, Gauri. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ulka, and thanks to the team at Harappa School of Leadership, and thanks everyone for joining. I had a great time.
Thank you. All right, Gauri. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.